Brenda Bailey, welcome to Careers That Matter. You have an official title, which means you're a minister of the Crown.
Yes, I am.
What ministry is it, and what does your job responsibility look like? Because, people go, oh yeah, I know, I've heard there's a minister of this and a minister of that. But what does it mean when you are now given that authority as the minister?
Wow, that's a great question. Thank you. The title is Minister of Jobs, Economic Development and Innovation, which is the best acronym in politics, JEDI. So I am the Minister of JEDI, which is endlessly entertaining. The job itself is quite broad. We have a number of different areas of the economy that we work in. We focus on economic development. A lot of that is regional economic development, but of course also economic development more broadly. We get to deliver interesting strategies to drive the economy forward. So for example, we've spoken before about the biotech strategy. We have a manufacturing strategy. We've been working on our maritime strategy. So there's a number of different components of the ecosystem that we are specifically focused on supporting their growth. So that's a big part of the work. I work very long hours, often 12 to 14 hours a day, usually 6 days a week. So it's a really big job. But frankly, I enjoy it because I feel like I'm getting a free PhD in British Columbia. The variety of industries and individuals that I get exposure to is quite extraordinary. So it's really, really honestly a great privilege.
What does that, like a day look like for you though? You're not always just running around doing interviews like this. What are some of the other elements of your day?
The day varies quite dramatically, I find. If we're in session, the day is in Victoria. So when we're in session from Sunday to Thursday night, I'm in Victoria. And those days are demanding and long. They start, usually we have meetings with stakeholders in a breakfast meeting, a lunch meeting, and a dinner meeting. You might do 1, 2, or 3 of those meetings a day. You're in the House when it's in session. You have to attend question period and prepare for question period. And sometimes you might not know the questions that are coming, but sometimes it's about staying up to date on the issues at play and preparing for them. So there's some prep work that happens in the day as well. And then whatever particular files you're working on, you have to sort of squeeze that in as well into those very busy days. On Fridays of those week, we come back to our constituency, and usually Friday and Saturday are focused on constituency work. And so that's a different sort of hat. You put on the MLA hat on Fridays and Saturdays. And that's really important work because those are the folks that voted you in, and you have a responsibility to ensure you're helping them as you've committed to. So some of that work might be connecting somebody to BC Housing, helping them problem solve. It might be a particular challenge that someone's having in their community. And that also is quite varied. And we also get to go out to events and support the different work that's happening in the riding as well. So that's kind of what it looks like during the in-session time. When you're not in session, for example, in the summers, if you're lucky enough to be a minister, as I am, and part of the Executive Council, we spend time traveling the province and connecting up with people that we don't get to see all the time when we're in Victoria. So getting out to the regions and talking to people about the issues that they're facing with. In my file, there's quite a large focus on support for the business community, and small and medium-sized businesses in particular have really been faced by some significant challenges in the last few years. So much of my summer has been traveling around British Columbia and meeting with chambers and individual companies and talking to people about the different challenges and the successes that they've had.
As you talk, I go, okay, hang on. How do you stay on top of all that? You must have a team. And it's important that they be in sync with you. So in essence, you're kind of that team's boss. How important is that dynamic that you have the right team so that, you go through all these meetings, but you're able to hang on to information, to get back to it, and then use it as you are also working to develop future policy.
Yes, absolutely so. And there's no underestimating the importance of the team. I'm very lucky. I've got a great team. And I would say less their boss and more their collaborator. Everyone brings something different to that table. And it's been really interesting. I've developed an extraordinary respect for the bureaucracy in Victoria. not something I had when I was in the private sector, and I had many stereotypes about what bureaucrats were like, all of which were quite dramatically wrong. Very bright, very hardworking, very devoted to their work is primarily what I've seen. And I'm really lucky to have a lot of those folks working with me. So it's a really interesting milieu because we bring in different perspectives and we sort of tackle whatever issue we're tackling from those different perspectives and work collectively on a solution. So it's very interesting.
You can't just drop into a role like this. How did you get here? Mm-hmm. When you in our earlier interview, you talked about growing up in Nanaimo and mm-hmm. loving the stars and science and wanting to know how things work. Mm. But where did that take you in your educational journey and then into the workforce?
Yeah, it's interesting. I have had a very windy career path, fascinating and enjoyable, but very windy. And some of that just might be my nature. I like to challenge myself quite often. But some of it, and I'm just going to speak quite frankly, some of it is just the reality of growing up, when I grew up, where I grew up as a woman. And some of the experiences I've had have been doors closing for me. And that's kept me from finding avenues that would have been more direct, I think, had I been a young man instead of a young woman. But I'm someone who kind of finds a way, So it's been an interesting career, and also being a parent and having 3 children and being an entrepreneur and what that looks like. So there's been a lot of sort of quick and dirty and scrappy solutions. For example, when I worked on my MBA, I didn't go to prestigious school. I did it between midnight and 2 a.m. when my kids were asleep. It's not always been the easiest path, but I think that's very common among entrepreneurs. And even though I'm in government, I do think of myself as an entrepreneur first and foremost. That's where I've spent most of my career as an entrepreneur in the tech sector. And you figure out what you need to do. You just kind of find a way. I really am a big believer that education is for everyone. I don't buy this sort of version of education that you go between 18 and 24 and then you're done and off you go for the rest of your life. The sooner we put that to bed, the better. I know for myself, I'll be a lifelong learner. Whenever I have an opportunity, I go back to school and learn something new.
Okay, so what was your first startup?
My first startup was, I sold T-shirts at university to make
That was your first startup.
That was my first startup to make some extra money. But my first real startup was Deep Fried Entertainment in 2003, 2004.
Great name, by the way.
It was quite funny, Stu, because my job prior to that had been running the Canadian Cancer Society, the Greater Vancouver region, and I had been involved in a prevention strategy that was really focused on good health, and left that, talking about 7 servings of vegetables a day, into a startup called Deep Fried Entertainment. But the gentleman I started the company with had chosen the name, and their view was everything is better deep fried, and so it was a dramatic switch in these 2 worlds in more ways than one. But Deep Fried, I was very lucky. I had met a gentleman in a rowing club. I used to be really into rowing, and he and I were racing together, and he was a coder at EA, and said, we're starting this company, and we're looking for someone to be our business manager, and I know you haven't worked in that space before, but any chance you have any interest? And I've been playing video games since I was 11 years old. That's 45 years of video gaming. And so it was an obvious yes for me. It was very easy for me to think about that being my first endeavor. I knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I just wasn't sure where the space would be. And I got so lucky. Sometimes luck is just a massive component in these things. And to have this team of people who were leaving EA, who had been original Need for Speed black box folks, it was kind of like, I'm considering going into the music industry, and someone says, hey, would you like to represent the Rolling Stones? Was sort of like that.
Wow.
Yeah. Very lucky.
And then you became a serial entrepreneur.
I did. I've always been a social activist. I've always cared about issues of equity and fairness. And I found that that side of me got quite revved up in the video game sector. There were many changes I wanted to see and became very involved in working on those changes. And that led to me starting my second studio, which was called Silicon Sisters, making high quality games for women and girls.
Wow. You moved into politics. Like you went, okay, I've done this now. I'm going to go into politics to, as you say, make a contribution back. You're a social activist. Why did you pick the NDP when, listening to your background, one might go, well, that almost seems to be antithetical to your approach moving forward through your business career. What was it about the NDP that attracted you?
I was lost in the wilderness for a while, I think, politically, and I don't think it's an unusual experience. I grew up in a family that was NDP. I was NDP in my roots. My father was in the forestry industry. But when I did my business studies, I switched, and I thought perhaps I was a BC Liberal. I did join the BC Liberals. Christy Clark asked me if I'd be part of her. She was putting together a council of female business leaders, but it wasn't a fit for me. And it wasn't a fit for a number of different reasons. But I recall this one particular case, which was the previous government made a decision to cancel funding for young people who had dropped out of high school. They used to be able to go back and get their GDE for free. And it wasn't a huge amount of funding. It was something like $2.2 million. And I found that very upsetting. I knew a lot of young people, often pregnant teenagers, who dropped out of school, and it just seemed to me so cruel not to leave that open. And I remember confronting Premier Clark about it, and I just didn't agree with her answer, and I felt it was cold-hearted. And I realized that while there's many things on a business side I agree with, I didn't find alignment on my social values. But then where did I fit? Because I asked the question, do I align with the BC NDP? And in many ways I aligned with my social values, but were they entrepreneurial? Did they have a business lens? And I have to tell you that it's been my experience that I just don't believe those two, this sort of BC Liberals are business people and BC NDP aren't. I just don't believe that's true. I don't buy that dichotomy. It's not been my experience. And I think that there are many business people who are deeply committed to social issues. And we have to allow that space to exist. Also, the BC NDP today is not my dad's NDP. It's a very big tent. And I've been really happy with my experience there. And I've also been so lucky because Premier Horgan, he doesn't know me from Eve. He invites me into the BC NDP, and then when I'm shockingly elected, offers me the opportunity to be parliamentary secretary for technology and innovation. That was a very brave thing to do. I was quite close to that industry. That could have gone badly. I could have been, not taking a business lens and only representing that industry. But he trusted that I would do that shift, and I did. And now Premier Eby has asked me to be part of his cabinet. So I've been given a tremendous amount of trust within the party and within the government. And I've been very, very impressed with my colleagues.
A young person looks at you and says, Minister, what's the single most important element of you, not just personality, but you, that led you to where you are now? Because I want to learn from you.
Yeah.
What would you say?
I would say my greatest North Star for myself is integrity. I mean, that is the most important thing in my world. And it served me very well in business, and it serves me very well in politics. I think it's the most important thing. My dad was, a heavy-duty mechanic from Nanaimo who had a million friends and was beloved, absolutely beloved. And I think it was because of his incredible integrity, just deeply honest, deeply forthright, take his shirt off his back and give it to you. And I remember him teaching me that, integrity is how you behave when no one is looking. And you can get away with it, but you don't.
There's a guy that I play tennis with. I'm going to give him attribution for this because I think it's such a beautiful sentiment. His name's Dan Olisic. And he says, a lot of people talk about values. But it's really only a value when you apply it.
That's right.
And it costs you something. That's when you know it's a real value.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah. And you see people who do that. They go, I'm willing to pay the price because this matters more to me than some perceived advantage.
Yes, I agree with that completely. Absolutely.
Thank you very much.
It's been a pleasure.